I stopped for a second because I realized how often I had spoken against myself without even noticing it. How often have you said, I can't do this. I'm just not disciplined. I'm not leadership material. I always mess things up. That's just who I am. That one's my favorite, by the way. And then we wonder why we struggle to move forward. If every day you speak to yourself like someone who has no value, eventually you're going to start living like it. If you're feeling stuck, directionless, or like there's more you're meant to pursue in this season of life, I created a free guided reflection workbook called Pursuing Your Calling. It's designed to help you gain clarity, reflect on where you are, and take intentional steps forward. You can download it through the link in the description in my bio on Instagram or Facebook. And if you're interested in going deeper through group or one-on-one coaching, there's also an option to let me know there as well, and I'll get a notification to reach out. Now let's get into today's episode. You will rarely rise above the way you see yourself. If you see yourself as incapable, unworthy, forgotten, or insignificant, you'll constantly fight against your own identity while trying to pursue your calling. But when you begin seeing yourself through truth instead of insecurity, it becomes much easier to walk in the direction God is calling you toward. Do you remember the Swing the Bat episode that I put out a couple weeks back? I wouldn't have swung the bat if I didn't think it was possible to hit the ball. I believed, even if it was just for a moment, that I could do it. Henry Ford is quoted for saying, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." The first time I heard that quote, I think it was from John Maxwell. The focus of today's episode is this. You are not perfect. You are not better than everyone else. But you're also not worthless, forgotten, or without purpose. You're a pursuer. A person created with intention. A person with a calling on their life. And where there is a calling, there is also the one who calls. So maybe the version of yourself you've been believing in is far smaller than the person God created you to be. I'm going to have 3 points in this episode, and I actually kind of like the 3-point format. And the first point here is your self-image determines the level at which you move. You will almost always move toward the level of your self-image. Your self-image becomes the lid on your behavior. If you deep down you believe that you're lazy, you say, I'll never change, I'm awkward, if you say, I'm not good enough to pursue that, then eventually your actions will start agreeing with that identity. Not because it's true, but because your mind wants consistency. That's why growth is difficult when your identity is unhealthy, when your identity is misaligned with your calling. You know, it's like being in a toxic relationship, except it's with yourself. You can't sustainably build a disciplined life while constantly telling yourself that you're a failure. You can't pursue your calling while secretly believing you have nothing valuable to offer. And this affects more than your behavior. It affects how much you better yourself. It affects how much you invest in yourself. It affects how much effort you believe you're worth. Because if you truly believe your life mattered, wouldn't you start treating yourself differently? Wouldn't you start investing in your growth, in your healing, in your discipline, in your relationship with God, into your purpose? The first person who should bet on you is you. Not because you're amazing in your own strength, but because God does not create people accidentally. And knowing that truth gives you a lot to bet on. Point number 2. The way you talk to yourself shapes the way you live. The most important conversation you have every day is a conversation you have with yourself. A lot of people are trying to pursue purpose while verbally tearing themselves apart every single day. You have to guard your self-talk. Because eventually your inner voice, and let's be real, your outer voice too, if you're like me and you talk to yourself, that starts to become your normal reality. Now, this doesn't mean you have fake confidence. It doesn't mean you put on a facade. It means learning to speak truth instead of agreement with insecurity. There's a difference between saying, I failed, and I'm a failure. One acknowledges a moment and allows you to think, how can I grow from this? The other creates an identity. And over time, identity drives behavior. One of the most powerful ways to improve your self-image is actually by serving other people. Because when your entire life becomes centered on yourself, your world gets incredibly small. But when you add value to others, something changes. You start realizing, I actually do have something meaningful to offer other people. Everything great is done in service to others. And honestly, the strongest amount of confidence comes from doing the right thing consistently, even when it's hard. Because building a good character builds self-respect. It's really easy to build a good character by serving others. And then through serving others, you're going to build that respect for yourself. And when you become someone who follows through, someone who serves, someone who keeps showing up for others and for yourself, you begin trusting yourself more. And confidence grows from evidence. Point number 3. You see others through the lens of how you see yourself. One of the most powerful ideas from the law of the mirror in the 15 invaluable laws of growth that I've been mentioning many times in the last few episodes is this. We don't always see others as they are. Often we see them as we are. People with a damaged self-image often assume rejection, compare constantly, struggle celebrating others, or you feel threatened by other people's success. I've been there, honestly, in all of these. So I get it. I understand. Does any of this sound familiar to you? But when your self-image becomes healthier, you stop living from insecurity. You stop needing to prove yourself all the time. You become more encouraging. You become more secure. You're more willing to help other people win. And this matters deeply on the pursuit of your calling, because your calling is not just about achievement. Your calling isn't for you. It's about impact. It's for others. And one practical way to grow this week is simple. Get a win every day. Small wins matter. Keep promises to yourself. Prepare well. Show up. Serve someone today. Pray. Read. Exercise. Encourage somebody. God said, no, this is what your calling is. And then Gideon looked in the mirror and saw weakness. God looked at Gideon and saw purpose. You can look at that in Judges chapter 6, verses 12 to 15. Then there's Jeremiah. He thought he was too young. Yet God told him, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. That's Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. And then Jeremiah said, alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. And then God came back to him and said, but the Lord said to me, do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you and say whatever I command you. God does not care about your circumstances. He provides you with a calling because he knows with him you can do it. God saw something in them before they fully saw it in themselves. That doesn't mean we become arrogant. It means we stop agreeing with lies that keep us small. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is seeing yourself truthfully. And the truth is, if God created you with purpose, your life carries value. And let me tell you, He did create you with purpose. Your responsibility is not to become perfect overnight. Your responsibility is to faithfully pursue growth and become who He has created you to be, despite the circumstances that you have in your life. So this week, I want you to do a couple things. I want you to pay attention to the way you speak to yourself. Every time you catch yourself saying that you can't, you say, I'm not enough, I'll never change, pause and ask, is this actually true, or is this just the version of myself I've become used to? Then do one thing this week that reflects belief in your future. Invest in your growth, whether with your money or with your time. Serve someone, volunteer at your church, for instance. Prepare for that next opportunity, for that time with your mentor. Write down questions. Get ready for that next doctor's appointment. If you're like me, you got to prepare for those. And maybe you got to apply for that job that you've been putting off because they're just going to reject me anyway. I want you to take that. The point is, take the next step. Take the step away from who you are towards who you want to become, towards who God is calling you to be, because your calling becomes much easier to pursue when you stop fighting against your own identity in Christ. You owe it to yourself to invest in yourself. You're a person of value. It's time to start acting like it. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pursuit of Calling podcast. You know what to do. Share it with your friends, with your family. Share the link directly with the person you believe needs to start pursuing their calling well. And thank you again for listening. For the people that do listen to the episode, that like and subscribe and rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, that helps me so much know how well this podcast is going. Guys, thank you again. Appreciate you, and I'll see you next time. Peace.